You know what I've discovered? Most of us underestimate the fight we're in. We think life is just about paying bills, raising kids, getting through another Monday, and hoping the week gets easier. But what if I told you there's a war happening around you every single day? A war for your mind, your peace, your future, your faith. And the enemy is not coming at you with tanks and guns. He's coming at you with doubt, distraction, discouragement, and fear. Most people treat prayer like it's the warm-up, like it's stretching before the real workout, like it's something you do before you face what's actually important. But the truth is, prayer isn't just preparation for the battle. Prayer is the battle. You don't pray just to get ready for what's coming. You pray because what's coming is already here. The fight for your mind, the war over your peace, the struggle for your faith. You think the enemy is waiting until tomorrow to attack you? He's been firing arrows at you since you woke up this morning, and prayer is not just how you recover after the hit. Prayer is how you block the arrow before it ever lands. The reason many of us feel weak isn't because God's power isn't available. It's because we treat prayer like a spare tire when it was meant to be the steering wheel. We wait until the situation blows up, until the relationship falls apart, until the anxiety is unbearable. Then we run to prayer as if it's damage control. But prayer was never meant to be your last response. Prayer was always meant to be your first weapon. And here's what you need to understand. Prayer is not about perfect words. It's not about a polished speech. It's not about sounding holy. It's about dependence. It's about connection. It's about standing in the presence of the only one who can turn the battle in your favor. When you pray, you're not throwing words into the ceiling. You're calling down strength from heaven into the middle of your weakness. See, the enemy doesn't fear a Christian who goes to church once a week and sings a couple of songs. He fears the one who understands that prayer shifts the atmosphere. He fears the one who knows that when I pray, I'm not preparing for victory, I'm enforcing victory. Prayer is not me asking God to show up. It's me standing in the truth that he already has. Think about this. Jesus himself prayed before every major decision. He prayed before miracles. He prayed before the cross. He prayed in the garden, not just to prepare, but because that was the real battle. The cross was the victory, but Gethsemane was the war. And if the Son of God needed to fight in prayer, what makes us think we can treat it like an optional extra? Prayer isn't a pregame speech, it's the game. It's not warm-up laps, it's the race. And every time you open your mouth in prayer, you're advancing against the enemy. You're pushing back darkness. You're taking ground that he thought he could keep. And you're reminding yourself that you are not fighting for victory, you are fighting from victory. But here's the thing, prayer is not always about what you see immediately. Sometimes you pray and the mountain doesn't move. Sometimes you pray and the answer doesn't show up the way you expected. That doesn't mean prayer failed. That means the battle is still being fought. Persistence in prayer is what keeps you standing when everything in you wants to fall. Prayer is what keeps you believing when doubt screams louder than faith. Prayer is what keeps you moving when your strength has run out. And can I tell you, some of the greatest victories in your life won't come when you're holding a microphone or standing on a stage. They'll come in the secret place. They'll come when you're on your knees at midnight whispering through tears, God, I can't do this without you. They'll come when you're driving in your car and you turn off the noise to turn your heart toward heaven. They'll come when no one else sees it, but heaven records it. Prayer is not the background, it's the front line. And when you realize that, you stop treating it like a side note and you start treating it like a strategy. You stop waiting until everything falls apart and you start building strength before the storm even shows up. Because when the winds blow, when the arrows fly, when the pressure rises, you won't be scrambling to find God. You'll already be standing with him. So the next time you're tempted to think, I'll pray later, remind yourself, later might be too late. The battle is happening now. And if you'll pray now, you'll be ready then. If you'll fight in prayer today, you'll stand in victory tomorrow. Because prayer is not just how you prepare for the battle. Prayer is the battle. And the ones who fight in prayer are the ones who win in life. We live in a world that celebrates what can be seen. Muscles, money, status, reputation. Everybody wants to look strong on the outside. But the battles you're fighting aren't outside battles, They're inside battles. The enemy isn't attacking your biceps. He's attacking your beliefs. He's not aiming at your body. He's aiming at your mind, your peace, your confidence, your faith. And that's why the armor you need isn't physical, it's spiritual. You can look tough on the outside and be falling apart on the inside. You can have everything together externally but be crumbling internally, because the battles of life are fought in the unseen. That's why God gave you armor that doesn't rust, armor that doesn't wear out, armor the world can't take away. The belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness, the shield of faith, the helmet of salvation, the sword of the Spirit. These aren't props or metaphors, they are real spiritual weapons that protect the most vulnerable parts of who you are. The belt of truth means I don't have to be defined by lies. Lies about my worth, my past, my identity. When everything around me shifts, truth keeps me steady. The breastplate of righteousness covers my heart, because the enemy loves to use shame and condemnation to pierce me with guilt. But righteousness reminds me I am not what I did, I am who he says I am. And the shield of faith, it's not a decoration, it's protection. Because the arrows aren't coming at you from the front. Sometimes they come from the back, sometimes from the side, sometimes in the dark of night when you're not ready. Doubt, fear, insecurity, temptation, all fiery dart, but faith quenches them. Faith says, even if I can't see the way, I still trust the one who makes the way. Then there's the helmet of salvation. Why a helmet? Because the enemy loves to attack your mind. He whispers, you'll never be enough. You'll never change. God doesn't care about you. And if you don't protect your thoughts, those lies will take root. But the helmet of salvation reminds you that your mind is covered by the fact that you are saved, redeemed, and secure. And then, the sword of the Spirit. Notice this is the only offensive weapon in the list. Everything else is for protection, but this one is for attack. And what is the sword? The Word of God. You don't fight thoughts with feelings, you fight thoughts with truth. You don't beat lies by reasoning them away. You beat lies by declaring what God says. That's why when Jesus was tempted, he didn't negotiate with the devil. He said, it is written. That's not just a phrase, that's a weapon. Now here's the danger. We often try to fight spiritual battles with physical weapons. We try to argue our way into peace. We try to spend our way out of anxiety. We try to control people so we can feel secure. But physical weapons can't win spiritual war. You can't fight depression with possessions. You can't defeat fear with force. You can't overcome shame with self-help. The armor you need isn't physical, it's spiritual. And maybe that's why you feel so worn out, because you've been swinging the wrong sword. You've been fighting people when it was never about them. The battle wasn't with your boss. The battle wasn't with your spouse. The battle wasn't with that person who betrayed you. The battle was spiritual. And the moment you realize that, you stop wasting energy on the wrong fight and you start putting on the right armor. Here's the good news. This armor never wears out. You don't have to polish it or sharpen it in your strength. God supplies it daily. But you have to choose to put it on. You have to decide each morning, today I'm standing in truth. Today I'm covered by righteousness. Today I'm lifting my shield of faith. Today I'm protecting my mind with salvation. Today I'm wielding the sword of the Spirit, because you can't win today's battles with yesterday's armor. Every new day requires a fresh decision to suit up, not physically, spiritually. So don't be fooled by what you see. Don't get intimidated by the size of the enemy. Don't measure victory by how strong you feel. The armor you've been given is not of this world. And when you fight with spiritual armor, you fight from a place of victory, not for it. The armor is spiritual, not physical. And when you wear it, no weapon formed against you can prosper. The enemy doesn't usually show up with a pitchfork and horns. He doesn't come knocking on your door announcing, I'm here to ruin your life today. If he did, you'd be ready. You'd slam the door. You'd stand strong. But that's not how he works. His attacks are subtle. They're sneaky. They're quiet. And if you're not careful, you'll mistake them for ordinary thoughts, ordinary feelings, or ordinary moments. See, the enemy doesn't need to destroy you overnight. He just needs to distract you little by little. He doesn't always come with obvious temptation. Sometimes he just plants a seed of doubt. Are you sure God really said that? Are you sure he's really with you? Are you sure you're good enough? It's subtle, but it's effective. Because if he can get you to question your foundation, everything you build on it starts to shake. Think about it. He didn't come to Eve in the garden with a sword. He came with a sentence. He didn't force her hand. He whispered in her ear. That's the strategy. If the enemy can't beat you with force, he'll chip away at you with lies. And those lies don't always sound evil. Sometimes they sound logical. Sometimes they sound like your own thoughts. Sometimes they sound like truth twisted just enough to pull you off course. That's why you have to be alert. Because the enemy doesn't always attack your strongest place. He goes for your weakest. He doesn't come against you when you're on the mountaintop shouting praises. He waits until you're tired, until you're lonely, until you're frustrated, until you're scrolling at midnight thinking no one sees. That's when he whispers. That's when he plants the thought. That's when he convinces you it's not that big of a deal. But here's what makes it dangerous. It usually doesn't feel like an attack. It feels normal, it feels harmless. It's just one compromise, just one click, just one angry word, just one day skipping prayer. But one becomes two, and two becomes a habit, and before you know it, what felt small has become a stronghold. Subtle attacks often show up as distractions. Not all distractions are evil, but anything that consistently keeps you from God's presence is a weapon in the enemy's hand. He doesn't need to turn you into a criminal to defeat you. He just needs to keep you comfortable, distracted, and disconnected from your source of strength. And can I tell you something? The most dangerous battles aren't always the ones you see coming. It's the ones you don't notice. The ones where you think you're fine, but slowly you're drifting. Slowly your passion is cooling. Slowly your confidence in God's promises is being eaten away. That's why awareness is everything. The subtle attacks only work if you're unaware. The moment you wake up to what's really happening, you can fight back. You can call the lie what it is. You can recognize, wait a second, that's not my thought. That's not God's voice. That's the enemy trying to sneak in. And here's the good news. Subtle attacks may be sneaky, but God's Spirit is sharper. He promised to give you discernment. He promised to guide you into truth. He promised that no scheme of the enemy can prosper when you're rooted in him, but you have to stay connected. You have to stay alert. You have to stay prayed up, because when you're spiritually asleep, subtle attacks succeed. But when you're spiritually awake, subtle attacks fail. So don't wait until the enemy shows up in an obvious way. Recognize him in the small things. Recognize him in the compromise you're tempted to make. Recognize him in the bitterness you're holding on to. Recognize him in the fear that tries to replay on repeat in your mind. Don't dismiss it just because it feels small. Deal with it before it grows. Because the enemy's goal isn't just to trip you today, it's to trap you for tomorrow. He wants to make little chains that eventually become big ones. But when you shine the light of God's truth on his subtle schemes, those chains break before they ever lock. So here's the challenge. Pay attention, pray with your eyes open. Don't just ask God to keep you from big temptations. Ask him to make you aware of the subtle ones, the little lies, the small distractions, the whispers that don't align with his word, because the enemy's attacks are subtle, not obvious. But if you stay rooted in truth, he won't succeed. You can have armor sitting in the closet, but if you don't put it on, it won't protect you. You can know every piece by heart: the belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness, the shield of faith, the helmet of salvation, the sword of the Spirit. But until you activate it, it's just theory. And what activates the armor is prayer. Prayer is not just something you do before battle. Prayer is what makes the armor effective in the battle. Without prayer, it's like carrying a shield, but never lifting it. It's like having a sword, but never swinging it. It's like having a helmet, but leaving it on the shelf. Prayer takes what God gave you and puts it into motion. The enemy doesn't mind if you study about the armor. He doesn't mind if you can list all 6 pieces from memory. What he fears is when you pray it into your life, because when you pray, truth becomes more than information. It becomes protection. When you pray, righteousness covers more than your heart. It covers your identity. When you pray, faith isn't just an idea. It becomes a shield that blocks every dart of doubt and fear. Think about it this way. Armor without prayer is like a phone without power. It looks impressive, it has potential, but without being charged, it doesn't work. Prayer is the power source. Prayer is the activation code. Prayer is how you say, God, I'm not just aware of the armor, I'm walking in it today. That's why the Bible doesn't just tell you to put on the armor. It says, pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. In other words, don't just dress up in the armor, stay in communication with the one who made it, because you don't just need armor for the fight, you need instructions for the battle. And prayer is the channel where God gives you strategy. Some of you have been wondering why you feel unprotected, even though you know the scriptures. Maybe it's because you haven't activated them in prayer. Reading about the helmet of salvation won't guard your mind unless you pray, Lord, renew my thoughts today, cover me from lies, protect me from confusion. Quoting about the shield of faith won't stop fear unless you pray, God, I trust you with this situation, strengthen my faith, help me hold it up when I feel weak. Prayer personalizes the armor. It takes it off the page and puts it on your life. It's not just an illustration, it's a lifestyle. And here's the thing, prayer doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need big words. You don't need fancy phrases. You just need a real heart that says, God, I need you to cover me today. I can't fight this in my own strength. I need your armor active in my life. The enemy wants you to think prayer is optional, that it's a nice extra when you have time. But if you only pray when you're desperate, you'll always be desperate. If you only pray when you're in trouble, you'll always be in trouble. Prayer isn't just crisis management, it's battle readiness. It's how you step onto the field already covered, already equipped, already protected. And don't miss this, prayer doesn't just activate the armor for you, it activates it for others. When you pray for your family, you're lifting the shield over them. When you pray for your church, you're declaring the sword of the Spirit over your community. When you intercede for someone else, you're standing in the gap, activating armor on their behalf when they're too tired to fight for themselves. That's why the enemy tries so hard to keep you silent, because he knows your prayer is dangerous. Your prayer unlocks heaven's strength in the middle of earth's battles. Your prayer puts armor on your spirit that he can't penetrate. Your prayer makes you a warrior, not a victim. So don't just know about the armor, pray it on. Don't just memorize the verses, declare them in prayer. Don't just admire the armor, activate it, because a soldier doesn't win by looking the part. A soldier wins by fighting fully equipped, and you have everything you need to stand strong. Every time you pray, you are not just talking, you are suiting up. You are lifting your shield, you are guarding your mind, you are covering your heart, you are drawing your sword. And when you fight that way, no weapon formed against you will prosper. Prayer activates the armor. And when the armor is active, the battle is already shifting in your favor. So I dare you, before you walk into another day, don't just grab your phone, grab your armor. Don't just talk to people, talk to God. Prayer is not your last resort, it's your first line of defense. And when you pray, the armor of God isn't just something you read about, it becomes something you live in, something you stand in, and something you fight in. And if you fight in it, you will win in it.